Beyond Baltimore, few Americans had experience with coal at the beginning of the 1800s. That would soon change in urban homes.
Right around the time of the War of 1812, what we start to see is a bit of a transition in home heating from open fireplaces to stoves. At first, these stoves would have burned wood, but then as firewood became more and more scarce, they started to burn coal. That was a period in which you had major fuel shortages. And it was because the country was running out of firewood for American cities. And so it's at that time that you see entrepreneurs begin shipping their coal to American consumers for home heating. Coal becomes the preferred home heating fuel because it was a lot cheaper and a lot more reliable than firewood. It's really home heating that begins this long association of Americans with cheap, abundant, and available energy. And so what coal does is it essentially allows industrial production to be both concentrated and it liberates it from sources of energy like water, wood, and wind.
Demand for coal was growing.
By the 1860s and into the 1870s, most Americans living in northern cities would have been burning coal. Once people become dependent on the pretty steady and efficient heat that coal provides, what they found was any disruption in that supply seemed chaotic.
Much of that coal had been coming from Pennsylvania, but that was changing too, as the steam engine on wheels covered more ground.
What we start to see is the emergence of essentially a national grid of coal production linked together by railroads to the point where if you were in Chicago and you were a consumer in the 1880s and 1890s, you could burn coal from any number of sources. What this meant for American coal consumers were relatively low coal prices. By 1900 in the United States, energy markets were really dominated by the fossil fuels. The American industrial economy, the large cities would have been utterly dependent to the point where shortage of coal would have been devastating for a city. We really start to see that dependency on fossil fuel that characterizes American society really throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century.
When you think about coal, certainly from about 1850 through to 1950, there's nothing you could do that didn't involve coal. If you wanted to go on holiday, it powered your train. If you wanted to have a hot bath, it heated your water. If you wanted to flush your toilet, that fresh water would have been pumped by a steam engine at your local waterworks. Baking, coal-fired ovens. Even when you look at streets and lighting, gas lighting, all made from coal. So you couldn't live without coal.
Coal was powering the economies of Britain, continental Europe, North America, Japan, and Australia, as these coal-rich countries adopted the technologies of the Industrial Revolution. For the first time ever, coal supplied half the energy consumed on Earth. Coal use continued to grow. By 1930, technological advancements were making electricity more useful and more available. Demand for coal increased.
Initially, electricity was entirely for the upper classes. Once electricity had become widespread with the grid built, then electricity began to become relatively inexpensive, and nearly all of it in Britain was produced by power stations running on coal. So coal was absolutely vital.
In America, local resources like oil and massive hydroelectric projects began meeting some demand. But coal-fired power plants generated half the electricity for the country's industry, businesses, and homes. As electricity was competing with coal gas technology for in-home lighting, a new primary energy source began replacing coal gas across America. High-pressure pipelines installed during World War II made long-distance transport of natural gas possible. Natural gas contained more energy and burned cleaner than the gas manufactured from coal.
You have to actually use less to get as much energy. And so in effect, as this higher value gas became available, it made the manufactured gas less desirable.
In just 50 years, global consumption of coal had more than doubled. But in the face of growing demand, technical innovations brought large-scale hydroelectric, oil, and natural gas into the energy marketplace.
If we look at home heating after World War II, what we really see is the rise in gas heat, a rise in people having oil furnaces in their house. And that represents a major break with the long tradition of the old-fashioned hearth, but also the industrial hearth.
But I think our awareness of coal as an energy source really began to fade as we adopted these other fuels. Coal became a hidden fuel, a forgotten fuel in our society.